I used to think a marriage ends with one big moment, a crash, a confession, a plate through a wall. Turns out it can end in 1,000 small ways. First, quiet edits to a schedule, a phone face down on the table, a new name showing up too often in a story about work. By the time the big moment arrives, you're not shocked so much as relieved to finally see the shape of what's been standing behind you. My name's Ryan Hale. I'm 45 and I fix elevators for a living. Union card in my wallet, steel toe boots by the door, a toolbox that smells like oil and old coffee. My wife, now my ex, is Cassie. She's an account manager for a mid-sized ad agency in Jersey City, the kind that sells sunlight to vitamin brands and ethics to tech bros. We have two kids. Maya's 14, all angles and opinions. Caleb is 9, mostly elbows and questions. If you asked me when the story started, I'd tell you it was a Tuesday night in January when the agency had urgent deliverables and Cassie was suddenly very interested in weekends. Except the office was closed on weekends. I know because I drove by once on a Saturday when she said she needed to be in the war room. Lights off, street quiet, war room my ass. Before that, there were other little things. She started comparing me to her boss, Grant. Not directly at first. She'd mentioned how decisive he was, how he held the room, how he operated at altitude. Meanwhile, I was the guy with grease on his hands who made sure people got to floors they paid for. I don't hold rooms, I hold doors. I didn't realize how insulting it was until I tried to picture her saying the same things about me to him and laughed out loud at my own fantasy. You want to know the one that cut? We were in the kitchen and Maya asked me to sign a permission slip for a debate tournament. We were both there, me and Cassie. Maya said, "Dad, can you sign?" And Cassie said to Maya, but really to me, if this needs a grown-up decision, we should loop your mom in. I'm her dad. The grown-up was already looped in. Grant's shadow stretched longer than his commute. I didn't go looking for evidence. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it. We're on a family phone plan, cheaper that way, and if you've ever spent a summer scraping by between overtime and school shopping, you know those small differences matter. The plan comes with a dashboard. I'd never cared before. Who wants to be the guy who counts minutes like that's love? But one night I clicked in and saw the pattern before I even knew what I was looking at. Calls late, pings from the boardwalk area in Atlantic City, weekends, repeating like a drum line. If you've never watched suspicion click into place, it's like recognizing a song after the first bar. You don't know how you know, you just do. I printed the call logs. I printed the location pings. I printed the Uber and Lyft receipts I found in our shared Gmail, the ones you don't think anyone sees because they're tucked behind travel rewards. Same pickup near our house, same drop-off near the same Atlantic City hotel. Not every week, not loud enough to be stupid. Every third weekend. Every time Grant had one of those leadership retreats everyone else rolled their eyes at and then attended anyway because they were trapped in the ladder. I didn't confront her. I sat with it. That's how I know I'd already changed. In my 20s, I'd have blown up the kitchen just to hear the echo. Now I had two kids who still needed both parents to show up to parent-teacher night without turning it into a debate round. You can't parent from a crater. I scheduled a routine service at a building where, rumor had it, a woman named Elise worked on the 12th floor. Elise was Grant's wife. I knew because Cassie had mentioned Elise twice, the way people say a brand name when they want you to know the cost of a handbag without mentioning money. I'd seen Elise once at a holiday party before the agency decided contractors didn't belong at parties. Tall, dark hair, intelligent, quiet. I fixed the door operator in her building and took the extra 10 minutes the work order didn't require. I walked into the lobby like I had another call and stopped at the security desk. You don't go charging up to a stranger with the worst news of their year. The guard called up. Elise came down. I recognized the eyes before I recognized the person. We stepped outside where the winter air was honest. "I'm Ryan," I said, "Cassie's husband." "I know who you are," she said, careful voice. She's one of those people whose default setting is composed. Is something wrong? "I don't know what the right word is," I said, "but we should probably use a quiet one." We sat on a bench by the planters. I didn't lead with accusation, I led with math. Weekends, 2 phones, a city by the water, times and dates. I watched her face learn a new story without letting her body fall apart. She asked me for the evidence. I had it in a folder in my bag. I hadn't planned to hand it to her on a sidewalk, but there we were. She flipped through pages, pings, ride receipts, the hotel confirmation that Cassie had dumbly sent from her work email the first time, as if the world needed an RSVP to our humiliation. Elisa's mouth tightened at the corners. Not rage, not shock, confirmation. She took out her phone and showed me a Slack thread. Her husband's messages, work sharp, too familiar late, too playful early, a calendar showing strategy day, Saturdays, an Amex business card feed with a resort spa charge buried inside an expense report labeled client wellness. She had screenshots like she'd been collecting them and waiting for the day someone else said out loud what she was already carrying. "We do this together," she said, looking up quietly. "What does quietly mean to you?" I asked. "No screaming, no social media, no museum of our pain for people we don't know," she said. "We get facts, we serve papers, we get out." We traded numbers. We agreed on a rule no one else would know. Not my brother who punches everything, not her book club that turns misfortune into wine, not our kids, not yet. A second rule, either of us could call it off if the plan became cruelty. A third rule, children come first. She didn't have kids, she said it anyway. That mattered to me. At home, I went to the family iMac on the desk that holds every permission slip and tax return of our last decade. Once upon a time, that iMac had been ours. Then it became the kids. Then it became the machine where we all did the boring parts of being alive. Years back, I'd set up iCloud backups for both our phones because the last time Cassie lost a phone, it was like watching someone misplace their personality. The old backups were still there, encrypted. I had the password. I restored an old backup to a spare phone we keep for when my nephew loses his mind on Minecraft and forgets what time is. There's nothing exotic about this, it's just remembering the key to a room you used to share. Text strings are weird when you're reading them as a third party. You see the rhythm without the music. I scrolled past lines and lines of not angry, not innocent banter. The messages that made me sit down were the ones that looked like schedules. Same place, different elevator. Friday night to Sunday morning. Tell them leadership. I'll bring your favorite coffee. Screenshots went into a folder I exported and printed. The things you learn as a maintenance guy end up helping. Label everything, date it, write down the source, make it stupid proof. You can fix a bad day with good labeling. Elise did the same on her end. She sent me Slack messages with Grant's username next to awful flirty sentences that made my skin feel borrowed. She forwarded the Amex feed with hotel charges nestled alongside board dinners. She sent calendar screenshots of team offsites that, weirdly enough, lined up perfectly with rides Cassie had taken to the boardwalk. We didn't trade commentary, we traded facts. Every time I wanted to write a sentence like I knew you weren't crazy, I wrote the date instead. Evidence loves silence. It's something I learned in elevators and forgot in my marriage. The plan came together the way good plans do, with boring details. The hotel was a slab of glass and confidence a block from the Atlantic City boardwalk, the kind of place that hides in plain sight. Elise booked a room on a different floor under her own name. I booked nothing. I wasn't going to be a guest, I was going to be a fact. We picked a Saturday that matched one of the retreat weekends. I arranged childcare with my sister, who thinks everything is a phase and every phase requires pizza. We packed overnight bags for the kids without saying why. I left a note on the counter for Cassie that said, Maya's debate, Caleb's soccer, back Sunday evening. We'll talk then. Here's something you might not know unless you've been divorced or spent enough time around courthouses fixing freight elevators. There's a whole industry around serving people legal papers. Some of them wear disguises and deliver balloons, some camp outside your job, and some are professionals who slip a document into your hand so cleanly you don't realize your life has been cut in half until the paper is warm in your palm. I hired the clean kind. A woman named Noreen who used to be a postal worker and who could find you if you changed your name and moved to a lighthouse. She met us in an Atlantic City coffee shop 3 blocks from the hotel. She didn't care about our story, she cared about timestamps. When she steps into the lobby, Noreen said, I'll make contact. I'll say her name, ask her to confirm, put this in her hand and say, you've been served. Everything else is on you. Nothing else is on us, Elise said. There's nothing else. Noreen looked at her like she'd seen every version of that sentence. She handed me a copy of the papers. Petition, affidavit, basic household numbers, proposed mediation. No cruelty, no monologues. The kind of clean-cut Glenn Darby would have admired if he had ever met me. The kind of clean-cut I didn't think I had in me until I did. We sat in Elise's room watching the corridor through the fisheye peephole like kids watching for Santa who brings ending papers. We had a clock running on the hotel Wi-Fi that matched Noreen's clock, that matched Grant's calendar, that matched the world. At 7:08 p.m., the elevator pinged. I heard the sound the way a boxer hears a bell. Cassie stepped into the corridor in a hotel robe and slippers. Hair up! The kind of casual, careful that says I live here for 2 days out of 4 weekends. She carried a room key in one hand and her phone in the other. My breath decided it didn't want to work. I was looking at the woman I married in a life I was not in. She looked soft and very far away, and behind the softness, a steel I used to admire when it was pointed at clients. Grant came out behind her in gym shorts and a t-shirt he probably wore to look down to earth. He touched her shoulder and she leaned into it like a habit. They walked toward the elevator. We waited 3 beats and stepped into the corridor after them. Elise's face did a small rearrangement and then settled into neutral. We followed at a distance like we'd rehearsed it, because we had, in our heads. Downstairs, the lobby was a bright bowl, the kind of modern that turns people into decorative pieces. Noreen was already in place near the desk, an envelope in her hand. Cassie stepped off the elevator and into the lobby with the gait of a person who plans to complain about the towels later. Noreen moved toward her like gravity. Cassie Hale, she said. Not loud, not performative. Cassie blinked. Yes? Noreen placed the envelope into her hand. You've been served, she said, and walked away like a ghost with a time card. For a second, Cassie didn't look at the envelope. She looked at me, the kind of look you save for moments when the universe rearranges furniture without asking. Her eyes did that little thing they do when she chooses whether to be angry or surprised. She chose offended. This is not what you think, she said. There it was, the most useless sentence in the English language. It's exactly what I think, I said, calm because the kids were somewhere else and all the yelling in the world wasn't going to make the papers unexist. It's also exactly what you planned. Grant turned, saw Elise, and did a full-body flinch. It was almost funny the way a man whose brand is confidence becomes a geometry problem when he has to account for angles he didn't measure. Elise, he said, trying to stand like a CEO and failing, let's go somewhere private. No, she said, one syllable like a clean cut. She raised her phone, not to record, but to look at her list. Slack screenshots, Amex charges, calendar entries. She didn't need to show him. He recognized the list without seeing it. Cassie was still holding the envelope like it might reveal a different outcome if she waited. Ryan, can we talk? Upstairs. A plea in the voice she used to get stubborn clients to extend a deadline. No, I said. The word surprised me with how right it felt. Upstairs is where secrets are. Down here is where we stop. People were looking. Not many. Atlantic City has its own private catastrophes, but enough that I felt the old instinct to diffuse. 20 years of being a guy who keeps things moving instead of letting them jam will do that to you. I didn't come here to humiliate her. I came here to put a line down and step over it. I'm not making a scene, I said. I'm making a decision. What about the kids? She asked. When all else fails, people throw children like shields. The kids are why this is happening this way, I said. No screaming, no breaking. We'll do therapy and a parenting plan. We'll tell them together, not like a story we can't agree on. But this part is over. I can explain, she said, like explanation is a kind of sorrow. Don't, I said, and walked toward the door. Elise matched my pace. At the threshold, she paused and looked back. Grant was holding the edge of the front desk like it might keep him from floating away. Cassie had finally opened the envelope. She read the first page, and then the second, and then the third, like someone getting bad test results in a language she resented learning. Outside, the boardwalk wind did its job and cut everything extra. Elise exhaled and sat on the low wall. She laughed once, short, not happy. Well, she said. Yeah, I said. Thank you for not, she said, gesturing toward the lobby, turning it into theater. Evidence likes quiet, I said. True, she said. Also, courage likes it sometimes. We didn't go back in. Noreen texted me 3 minutes later, service complete. Good luck? I texted back, thank you. Then I texted my sister, sleepover going fine. She sent me a picture of Maya and Caleb on the couch, pizza scars on their shirts. A movie paused on two faces pretending to be in love. I felt something in my chest unclench and then retighten around the thought of telling them. I drove back to Jersey City that night, stopped in front of the apartment and sat with the engine off and the radio, not even pretending to be useful. I practiced sentences. None of them felt like kindness. I went upstairs and kissed sleeping foreheads and wanted to break into the past to warn myself. The next morning, Cassie texted, "We need to talk." I typed, "We will," with a therapist. She typed, "You're being dramatic." I typed, "No, I'm being careful." She typed, "I can fix this." I typed, "You've fixed enough." We found a family therapist who didn't flinch at our story. She scheduled individual sessions for each of us, then one with me and Cassie, then one with the kids where she taught us how to say the truth without adding confetti. We sat on a gray couch and told our children we were separating. Maya didn't cry. She folded in on herself and asked practical questions that broke me more than tears. Caleb cried and then was furious at himself for crying because third grade teaches boys so many wrong rules. Cassie tried a few moves over the next weeks. She suggested a reset weekend, just us, to reconnect. I said no and heard myself like someone else's father finally learning his line. She said we owed it to the kids to try. I asked her if she owed it to them not to disappear to Atlantic City twice a month. She said I was punishing her. I said I was installing a guardrail. We met with a mediator. We built a co-parenting plan that looked like a spreadsheet and worked like a life raft. Schedules, exchanges, holidays. No overnights with friends while the kids were present for 6 months. First right of refusal when work ran late. I made less than she did. We didn't turn money into a war. Maintenance for 18 months while she recalculated. Child support by the book. No heroics, no punishments. Our therapist called it a high conflict risk with low conflict behavior. I called it making sure the elevator stopped on the right floors. My mother wanted me to let Cassie find herself and then forgive her. My brother wanted me to go to Grant's gym and find his face with my fist. My union buddies wanted beers and trash talk and maybe a road trip with a new tattoo. I did none of that. I fixed elevators and made dinner. I packed school lunches and learned how to braid hair badly while Maya practiced patience like it was a sport. I told Caleb I didn't know why the Mets break hearts every September and that it wasn't his fault that sometimes people who promise forever change the terms. I told myself it wasn't my fault either. Elise and I kept in touch. Not romantic, not then. It was more like we were two divers who'd been in the same cold water and recognized the same ache in each other's bones. We sent each other small wins, a signed mediation line, a new key on a new keyring, a first night of sleep without dreams that looked like hotel corridors. She told me when her divorce was final. I told her when mine was. We got coffee one afternoon to trade envelopes our lawyers had insisted still needed trading. We sat outside at a metal table that made my elbows cold. She laughed about something small and normal, and I remembered what it felt like to laugh without an apology attached. A year is a strange amount of time. It's long enough to become a different person and short enough to be embarrassed you once thought you couldn't. I found a new rental on a street where the trees are older than anyone who complains about parking. We set up 2 bedrooms with posters and headphones and a pile of sneakers by the door that could trip an ox. I learned that Sunday dinners can be grilled cheese and still count as a tradition if you say it with your chest. I learned that I like quiet walks more than I like bar noise. I learned that I don't need to be measured by a boss in shiny shoes to know what I'm worth. Cassie tried to float a reconciliation once, 3 months in. She left a note on the front step of the new place, folded into itself like an apology should be. I read it at the kitchen counter twice, then put it in a drawer with old warranty cards. When she came to pick up the kids, I said, "We are not going backward." She looked like she wanted to say that backward is sometimes forward if you rebrand it. She didn't. She hugged the kids and left. The door closed, and I stood there hearing that new sound, the sound of a life not spinning. I'm not going to dress this up and turn it into a morality tale where I get everything and she gets a lesson. I got stability. I got two kids who know their dad doesn't explode. I got a calendar that belongs to me again. I got an apartment that doesn't hold secrets the way some walls do. She got herself, whatever that is now. She and Grant didn't last. Dramatic men rarely do. I heard he took a job in Austin where altitude is a state of mind. That sounds right. Elise and I are friends, maybe more someday, but neither of us rushes what might actually matter. We take walks, we talk about books, we share the kind of silence that feels like respect and not like waiting for an ad break. She asked me once if I ever regretted the way we did it, quiet, clean, no theater. I said no. I said I'd finally learned that not every truth needs an audience, just a witness. She said that sounded like something a therapist would stitch on a pillow. I said maybe I'd learn to sew. The kids adapted the way kids do when adults do their jobs. Maya survived freshman year and told me I was not allowed to wear my work boots to the debate tournament. I went in clean sneakers like a man who understands optics. Caleb scored 2 goals in a game where the coach finally remembered to sub him in before the second half, and he ran across the field like his life had decided to say yes. We celebrated at the diner with milkshakes that made our teeth hurt. Perfect. If you came here for fireworks, I'm not your guy. If you came here for a way to walk yourself out of a burning room without setting your kids on fire, maybe I am. I didn't punish her with volume. I didn't try to win by making her smaller in front of strangers. I chose a lobby and a sentence and a door. I chose to put first what I wanted my kids to believe about me when they're old enough to tell this story themselves. I chose myself in the quiet. Would you have done the same? Would you have walked into that lobby and kept your voice low? Or would you have made a moment that strangers would tell for you? Is a quiet serve in a hotel foyer more grown up than a public expose, or did I take the easy way out? Tell me what you would have done and why. Leave your thoughts in the comments. If this story made you feel something or think twice, hit like and subscribe. Another one is already on the way.